told this to me. He came here from Europe as a child, as a boy of 13 or 14 years old. And the laws in those days were that they were sponsored by the Hayas, by the American Jewish organizations that placed refugees, immigrants, and they didn't want all the refugees and immigrants to settle in New York. They were afraid they're going to get a little Lubavitch and a little Bobov and a little Satmar. They got that anyway, but they were hoping to avoid it. And they spread them all over the country. So this person and his family was situated in Philadelphia. And at that time in Philadelphia, there was a shliach, Rabbi Popek, alav shalom. And now there was a young Lubavitcher boy stuck in Philadelphia because of the rules of the Hayas. So he was very excited about helping Rabbi Popek do his work. So Rabbi Popek used to ask him to distribute things for him and so forth. So once on a Friday, he asked him to distribute leaflets about a Mesilas Shabbos. And he went from shul to shul and put on leaflets for the Mesilas Shabbos. In those days in Philadelphia, there were a number of old Lubavitcher shuls, Veasisa, Anshe Lubavitch, Beis HaKnesses Tzemach Tzedek, Nusach Ari, and so forth. There were many. There used to be hundreds and hundreds of Lubavitcher shuls all over the United States. They were Nusach Ari. They were not necessarily Lubavitch, but they were Chabad, loyal to the Alter Rebbe. And he walked into one of these shuls, and he put down the papers, and an elder Yid, an older fellow, calls him over and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm putting out leaflets. Lubavitch is organizing Mesilas Shabbos. Little children who go to public school are going to get together," and so forth. He says, "Show me the piece of paper." So he shows him the Tzitz, the note. He reads it, and he looks up at him, and he makes one of those typically Russian, I can say it, I'm Russian myself, cynical comments. "Lav dafki yidaf telen." You don't necessarily have to give this out. And for this young Lubavitcher who had just come from Europe to hear that kind of cynicism, that kind of throwing ice on his passion and raining on his parade, Lubavitch was starting out. There was such enthusiasm, such excitement, and an old fellow who probably his own children weren't even from was saying, this may not be such a good idea. Is a classic example of Amalek. And perhaps this person's intentions were, he was an old-timer, and Yiddishkeit to him was davening and Erichas Atfilah. Whoever heard of Lubavitch doing Mesilas Shabbos, kind of. But it's Amalek nevertheless. And the essence of Amalek is his whole MO, his entire purpose, is to take away some of your passion. Just do what you're doing, don't be so excited. There's the famous Maimed of Amalek, Zocher, Samachay, from 1905, from the Rebbe Rashab, which was, of course, repeated with extensive commentary by the Frierdiker Rebbe in Peizai in 1927. Both memoirs are now published. And the Rebbe Rashab's version is much shorter. The previous Rebbe's version, especially when he gets to the actual description of the Amaleks, is far more elaborate. And he describes different Amaleks, different techniques. One is you see a person who's excited about Judaism, and you make fun of him. You call him shallow, simplistic, overly emotional. And they're all different categories of Amalek. The one that stands out in my memory is the person who says, "We're intellectuals. We are sophisticated and deep and nuance inclined or nuance disposed." Sophistication and subtlety and nuance doesn't allow itself for such passion. And since we study Chabad Hasidus and we understand the intricacies of Chabad and the subtlety of Seder Ishtalshalos and so forth and so on, we don't allow ourselves such excitement. That's Amalek too, even if it's an Amalek based on a sophistication and even a supposedly religious sophistication. It's all Amalek.